Hey, y'all. Before we get into the lesson today, let's take care of just a little bit of housekeeping. On these quizzes, some of y'all are taking the quiz, you don't get the grades you like, and then you go back and you resubmit it and take the quiz again. Y'all, you're wasting your time. I'm only going to take the first one that you take. So make sure that you do your best the first time. Don't rush through these things. Some of y'all are doing outstanding, 90s and 100s every time. But I've been doing the same thing for several weeks now. So you already know that you're going to have about 10 multiple choice questions on the quiz after the lesson. They're worth 10 points each. And that's just where it is. So if I were you, I'm sending you the PDF file. I would have it pulled up while I'm taking the quiz, and you can do that. Now you may need to pull it up, maybe on the phone and take the quiz on the computer, whatever you need to do. But have it where you can go back and look at it and pay attention when you're going through it and read it very carefully. Okay, because like I say, once you submit it, I'm only taking the first one. All right. So in 1824. We got a new president. His name was John Quincy Adams. A lot of people didn't like the way it turned out. Andrew Jackson actually got more votes, but because there were 4 people running for president, the votes were the electoral college votes were split up 4 ways, and so nobody got half of the electoral votes, and that's what you had to be president. So the House of Representatives stepped in, and they named John Quincy Adams the president. People got mad about that. They didn't like it. They didn't think it was fair. They thought there was some backroom dealing going on. But it happened. So y'all know president's term is 4 years. So after the election of 1824 came the election of 1828, 4 years later. This time only 2 people were running for president, John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. So there was nobody else to get in the way and split up the electoral college, the electoral college votes. Now, this got to be a real heated campaign. Okay, they weren't focusing on the issues that was going on in America and things like that during the campaign. They were attacking each other's personalities and each other's character. Okay, it was a real, what we call today, a mudslinging campaign. The guys that supported Andrew Jackson went back to saying that in 1824 it was a corrupt deal. They also didn't like John Quincy Adams because they said he was an aristocrat. Now, an aristocrat is somebody that's considered to be in the kind of the upper class. They're well off. They're a little fancy. They got a lot of money usually and upper crust. And one of the things that John Quincy Adams had a reputation for was that people didn't feel like he was really approachable, and they didn't feel like he represented what's called the common man. Okay, they felt like he was really looking after the rich people, but most of the people in the country aren't rich, just a few, and they didn't feel like John Quincy Adams really kind of took care and looked after the working class, common man type people. Andrew Jackson, on the other hand, had just the opposite reputation. Remember, I told you in the last lesson that he was born in a log cabin. His parents were poor farmers. Now, he had done very well for himself, and he had made some money. But he was still considered to be sort of the champion of the working man type thing, sort of a guy for the common people. Now, the people that did like John Quincy Adams, though, looked at Andrew Jackson's military background, and they called him a military chieftain. And they said that, if Andrew Jackson got to be president, he was going to do just kind of like Napoleon Bonaparte did. Remember, we talked about Napoleon a while back. He was the French leader who went to war against all of Europe. And they felt like Andrew Jackson was just going to be wanting to fight everybody because he had been a military man. But that really didn't sway very many people. Jackson won this thing by a landslide. He won the election of 1828 and became the next president of the United States. It wasn't even close, okay? He carried almost the entire country. Not quite. There were a few northeastern states that voted for him. But for the most part, he carried the large majority of the country. So he won this thing easily. Now, under Andrew Jackson, the people were very comfortable. After an election is held, you have what's called an inauguration. We talked about an inauguration when we were having class in school. But an inauguration is kind of a ceremony that they have after the president's been elected, and it goes and officially swears him in and makes him the president of the United States. They show him on TV now when we get a new president. He's inaugurated. You'll see him put his hand on the Bible and swear an oath and all that. when Andrew Jackson went to do that, there were tons of people following him, just plain common folks, working folks, farmers, people that worked in factories, these kind of things. What we'd call blue-collar workers today, okay? And people just loved Andrew Jackson. He was very, very popular. One guy said this, and you'll see this in the PDF file, which, by the way, that PDF file, I'm just scanning out of the book, okay? That's what it is. He said this. He said, countrymen, farmers, gentlemen, mounted and dismounted, boys, women, children, black and white, carriages, wagons, carts, all pursuing, talking about Jackson, to the president's house. So in other words, he's saying all different kinds of folks. It didn't matter what color they were. It didn't matter if they were men or women, boys or girls. When he says mounted or dismounted, not everybody could afford a horse back then, so a lot of people had to walk. So you had folks that could afford things like horses and carriages, folks that were too poor and had to walk. All classes of people were supporting Andrew Jackson. And so the idea here was that Jackson was going to be a president for everybody, not just for the elite, not just for the rich folks, not just for the aristocrats, which is a word I want you to be kind of familiar with, okay? But he was a president for everybody. Now, he still had some critics, you know, the people that supported John Quincy Adams in the election, and those critics said that he showed a king mob, basically was ruling the nation. But they were really just kind of being petty and mad because their guy lost. Now, after this election, okay, well, really a little bit before this election, the Federalist Party had gone away. So now the only party left was the Democratic Party, okay? So we had one party. That means that people weren't arguing and fighting over political party type stuff, okay? So it was more of a concern with issues. But in about, I want to say it was 1824. I'm not going to ask you this on the quiz, but I think it was 1824. There was a new party that came up called the National Republicans, okay? The National Republicans was the party that supported John Quincy Adams. Andrew Jackson was one of the Democratic parties. But in 1834, that party changed their name to the Whigs, okay? The Whig Party. Now, the Whig Party wanted federal government to spur the economy, and the book here says those who supported the Whigs included Eastern business people, some Southern planners, and many former Federalists. All right, so these are the guys that wanted a very strong national government. The Democratic Party was the ones that supported Jackson. Okay, Andrew Jackson was part of the Democratic Party. And it says here that today's Democratic Party traces its roots to Andrew Jackson's time. Democrats included frontier farmers as well as workers in eastern cities. So at this time, the Democratic Party was really kind of the blue-collar, common man party, okay? Now, we went through two different ways to choose candidates. And the first way was a caucus. A caucus was a private meeting where you had a bunch of rich folks, very influential, well-to-do people, and they would get together. Each party had a caucus. The Whigs had a caucus, and the Democrats had a caucus. And they would have influential people that would get together, and they would decide who their party was going to run for president, all right? But the people didn't like that idea because it wasn't very democratic. The people felt like they really weren't getting a say in it. You only had these elite, well-off, aristocrat, rich folks that were getting to say who was going to run for president. So they came up with another system, and the other system was the nominating convention. And really it is a lot more fair. The nominating convention is where every state would send delegates, and those delegates then would choose who that party was going to run for president. So the Democrats in every state would send delegates, and the Republicans from every state would send delegates, and all the Democratic delegates would get together, and all the Republican delegates would get together, and those delegates would decide who was going to run for president. And people really felt like that was a much more fair system because they felt like everybody then had a say, not just the well-off rich folks. So that's pretty much our lesson for today. Now, I'm telling you a lot about these presidential elections because this year is 2020. And in November, we are going to have another presidential election. So when you see stuff going on TV, or you read about it on the internet, or you see it in the newspaper, whatever, I want you to kind of have at least some idea of what they're talking about, what's being said, and what's going on, okay? All right, guys, listen, I love y'all. I miss you. By now, you already know that we're not going to go back to the middle school for the rest of the year. So we'll start back next year. That breaks my heart. When we left for spring break, I had no idea that it'd be the last time this school year that I saw y'all, and I wish that wasn't the case. Just so you know, I've even got 2 brand new boxes of blow pops, so I can give y'all blow pops. But maybe you'll get us a sucker next year. Y'all, I love you. I miss you. Be safe. Take care of each other, and I'll talk to you next time. Okay? Bye bye.